First, we have Sharon Price-John, who's CEO of Build-A-Bear and an author. Her new book comes out in January. Stay tuned on LinkedIn for that. We have Sherry Hashimi, who is with L3 Harris, and L3 Harris is the aerospace and defense technology leader. She is the global head of engineering, one of the few females in aerospace and defense engineering. So I'm really excited and impressed to have Sherry with us here today. We have Howard Wright, who is the global vice president of the entire universe of Amazon startups. And I have to tell you, that's a pretty big universe. So really excited that we could actually get him here with us today. We have Michelle Wilkerson. Michelle runs as Senior Director for Insurance and Risk Management for one of the leading commercial space companies, Sierra Space. And we at IBM just brokered a very large venture with you, so we're very excited to do that space work. And then finally, we have Alex Goldberg, who is a serial entrepreneur. I liken him as the Damon John of the tech space. He really focuses on helping tech companies raise capital, blending scientific research and technology. So that's my brief overview. You're going to provide more information about yourselves as leaders here in a minute. What I'd like to ask each of you for the first kind of series of questions, and I'm going to ask it as the group goes, and then we're going to do a little bit of speed dating. So I'll ask each of you some very targeted questions, but this first round will go all the way through the panel. So Sharon, if you could start in sharing, just in a few sentences, describe what it means to be an effective leader, and what do you believe is the most important quality in an effective leader today?
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm just so delighted to be here. Thank you, George, for this opportunity. And so much of what you mentioned in the lead-in is what it takes to be an effective leader. I've actually had 3 things that I wanted to mention, and the first is vision. It's really important to have a view of not only what you expect to see from your corporation, from your people, from your organization, how you expect them to engage and interact with each other, but it's important to do that as well concerning something greater than the company itself. And we've created a mission statement that's to add a little more heart to life. And that speaks very truthfully to who we are as a company, because if you've ever been to Build-A-Bear, you're actually putting a small heart in every single bear, the 225 million bears that we've made across the globe at this point. And that experience is really important for the kids and the adults now that go through our Build-A-Bear, our iconic Build-A-Bear process. But having that value-based company is absolutely critical, and you need to create an organization that understands that. The second is collaboration. You need to be willing to listen to everyone's points of view, up and down the organization as well as across functional areas, and bring those people together and encourage and reward that collaboration. Additionally, we collaborate with our guests. We also collaborate with our partners and people outside of our own sector to try to do the best thing that we can do for our company and the world at large. And third is authenticity. And it really is very, very helpful if your own personal values align with those values of the company. People know when they don't. So I encourage you to think through, even in the early stages of a career for some of our younger people here today, that they align their goals and their mission and their corporate objectives, if they think of their future, with their own personal values. I'll end that portion with a famous quote from Teddy Roosevelt, which some of you may know is the namesake of the teddy bear. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Thanks, Kim, and thank you for the title promotion. Director of Engineering, I have a global team, and as I've come into this role, I've been in for a few months now. I think effective leaders really should bring along 3 traits, and I actually learned this summer while I was sailing. We sailed from Svalbard, Norway to Iceland, and our skipper Jan Emtrup was so immaculate in his leadership, and we actually talked about it in terms of how to sail through heavy seas, and the 3 tenets are speed, stability, and safety. And speed from the sense of keep your pace, keep moving. A leader needs to keep the group moving forward. If you slow down, you are prone to more damage, especially, you know, in heavy seas. You're prone to having more damage at that point. So keep moving. It's best to keep moving and figuring out how to keep your teams moving. The second, stability is extremely critical. You know, creating that stable boat, you know, changing the sails, reducing the size of the sails, adjusting the boat so that your team can actually function within those heavy conditions. And then ultimately safety, so that you as a leader are responsible for creating that safe environment so that they can move with speed and stability, and that they can do that and take care of themselves and others. And I think those are the three really important tenets of effective leadership.
Thanks. Humbled to be in these hallowed walls today for sure. I think about authentic leadership. We have all been around and on teams with inauthentic folks and leaders, and that is very easy to detect. Being a team leader, being a team captain, also introduces some vulnerability where you might not know the answer, and the desire is to get a higher IQ decision as opposed to just what I know or one other person knows. I have found myself copying things that I've learned / stolen from mentors of mine over the years. And authentic leadership in all of its forms, including the vulnerability, is something that I've really been trying to lean into lately, which is listen and let the entire room speak versus the most senior person in the room first, because that produces a ridiculously biased opinion. Authentic leadership, Kim.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I think echoing right along the panel so far certainly is following along in those thoughts. To me, it's also integrity, I think, is a critical leadership perspective. When you have the vulnerability to be able to actually stand for what not only the company believes in, but also what your personal beliefs are. So for my company, Sierra Space, our mission is to build a platform and space to benefit Earth. And we take that very, very seriously. It's a responsibility, but it's also a privilege and something that just elevates our discussions that we have with leadership, allowing different voices to be heard in the room. I think Deepak also mentioned it well too when he's going through his acronym of what a leader is. That's certainly something that I think we should pause, and really absorb what the meaning of leadership is and can be.
Hi, first of all, let me also reiterate my thank you to George and to Jen. It's really a privilege to be here today and to share the stage with such an esteemed group of individuals. To expand upon my serial entrepreneur label, I currently am a co-founder of Adastral, which with my business partner Maurizio Vecchione is a moonshot factory. It was born out of the pandemic. We really wanted to start a machine, something like Google X, that could help have a profoundly positive impact on global health in a for-profit manner. It's sort of a mix between having a double bottom line venture capital fund and an incubator with new ideas that could have a profound global impact. When I think about leadership, if you put yourself in my shoes for a second, I often have a disaggregated group of people from across the world. I have scientists in labs from 100 different scientific institutions, and somehow or another, they have to come together around an idea or whatnot. So one of the thoughts that did spring to my mind was one of my mentors at Columbia when I went to business school, Michael Feiner, a professor, had been the longtime chief people officer at PepsiCo. He always talked about the rule of the cathedral. Nobody likes going to work every day chopping stone, but if you give them a larger vision of what they're building together, it's amazing how they show up to work early. So whether I've been leading organizations as a co-founder or as a CEO, or currently in my current VC role, just trying to pull together a variety of cross-disciplinary people with a broader goal to help the world somehow with a new invention that both is for-profit and has profound impact on the SDGs. That's really sort of how I think about it. And I guess my twist on Professor Feiner's line is I really view the product as the protagonist. I typically view that, this unseen entity that we can all get behind as the aligning force that draws people to work a little harder every day, to talk to someone who they're usually not used to talking to because someone's very technical or very focused on the golf course, but really focus on what the objectives are for the product to be successful. So I threw a lot out there, but I'm looking forward to expand upon a few areas.
That's wonderful. Thank you. You brought up the SDGs. And for the Sustainable Development Goals, as it relates to leadership, I'm going to ask you very quickly, we're going to do speed date, share what your organization is doing or what you've been doing to support the Sustainable Development Goals from a leadership perspective. Do you want to go back this way? I love to mix it up a little bit. So go ahead, Alex.
Sure. So to expand further, we are responsible for creating, spinning off 2 companies per year, and every one of them is going to have some sort of translational science, biology, artificial intelligence, deep science, deep tech roots. But at the same time, it's going to focus on SDG 3, good health, SDG 15, life on land, SDG 2, zero hunger, 6, 13, 14, and 7. But which is to say that we're genuinely measuring. People do what you measure. That's one of the most important leadership rules that we've got. And so to the extent that we can have not only an accounting statement of what the cash flow is, what the accrual accounting is, but also what was the impact of what we're doing, we actually view impact as an unusual lens through which to find extraordinarily profitable opportunities. Those that are global scale markets that we believe will lead us with a special edge to companies and to products that in fact will have more customers than you can imagine, and thus are the baby unicorns of tomorrow. We would even say that the climate tech, health tech sector that we're in is likely going to be the source of the first $1 trillion company in the climate tech area, the next economic sector that's going to grow like mad, and we want to be there at the birth of it.
Yes, fantastic. It's very exciting. So I had to step back a little bit because when we're talking about what opportunities there are in space, the UN's Sustainable Development Goal mission is stated as a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and in the future. And what we're doing at Sierra, certainly it couldn't be more meaningful because we're building this platform in space to benefit life on Earth, to change the world, and to have a positive alteration of the course of humanity. And this is going to be taking place prior to 2030. So when we're talking about some of these goals actually being attainable, they're being worked on right now.
Thank you. At Amazon, one of the leadership principles is we talk about with the success and this scale comes broad responsibility. So how do we as employees and leaders lean into that responsibility? One of those is our Climate Pledge Fund, which is a $2 billion fund to help everyone in the world create a better, more carbon neutral future. That is one of the things that I'm very proud of our organization, to not just speak this when it's convenient, but to have the commitment from our shareholders, from our board, from our senior leadership team that we owe it back to the world to give it our best effort to see if we can create some carbon neutrality.
For me specifically, I'm really focused on creating an inclusive workspace and creating that equity amongst people in order to be able to build the best products and get to those new ideas. You've got to be able to reach access to all of those thoughts, those brains, those ideas, those conversations, those perspectives. And if you don't create those environments for that to foster, you're super limiting yourself to just that basic subset of what, the usual people that are going to speak up. And, there's great things that can come from those conversations. There's so much more on the other side of those when you start reaching and accessing those individuals who might be more quiet or are super hesitant to speak up. And so for me personally, operationalizing what that really means amongst our teams and then using that as a catalyst to get those ideas to tackle the larger, harder problems.
Yeah, it's been such an incredible journey in the last particularly 2 to 3 years being a publicly traded company. Although we are quite small, I've been very enthused to hear today some commentary about it doesn't matter how small you are, you still have a responsibility. We're not Amazon, we're not IBM, we're not Microsoft. we're not Siemens, but we still have a role to play. And in that role as Build-A-Bear, that, people may say, well, you're just a retailer that sells teddy bears. It's so much bigger than that. And as a founder, a woman-led company, founder was the woman, I'm the second CEO, we've always had those goals against DEI. Still, we've actually stepped that up in recent years. And now we're implementing, as a publicly traded company, many of the ESG goals. I would say that I'm completely encouraged by the use of a new word, stakeholder capitalism. I'm hearing it more and more, and it gives the CEOs of publicly traded companies a much broader platform to be open about objectives that have and initiatives that are supporting goals beyond what might have been the traditional type of capitalistic purview. And with that, what we have done over the years, one, it's the SDG 5, which is about equality and women's empowerment. If you think about, we run, including our franchises, 500 stores around the world. Many of our stores are managed by women. They're running little $1 million businesses. They're learning so much about how to manage money, manage people in this microcosm that they use to empower the next generation of kids that are often working for us. A lot of young people learning about business in its simplest way. And secondarily, about early childhood education. Through the Build-A-Bear Foundation, we've recently expanded our aperture beyond just helping people and families in need. And man, was I excited to hear that research about oxytocin and that the hugs, teddy bear hugs, are making people smile. And it's actually proven now. But we are now working with First Book, and in our 25th year, which is this year, have pledged and will be able to provide 125,000 books to kids in need. So what other stakeholder is more important than the education of our children when we all know that so many of the predictable aspects of inclusive of how many jail cells we choose to have in 20 years are based on the literacy rates of children in the 3rd grade. That's the way to change the world.
Agreed. Well, here's the thing. I'm not comfortable just asking one of you a question because the information that this group is getting is so powerful. This is a panel like no other that I've experienced, so I want to thank you for your time. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine the last 3 questions. And because you're exceptional leaders, I know you can handle it. Here's what I'm going to ask you to think about. What advice you'd give the youth of today to become leaders of tomorrow? And I would like you to take into account your own leadership journey and particular moments of adversity that you've experienced that you think can be an opportunity for you to show where you've broken through a barrier and you've swept the glass up behind you. So, what would you tell that youth today? Sharon, do you want to start?
Sure, Kim. Well, first, when you talk about what are some of the challenges that may have created you, the path for you to be a leader, that is the path to become a leader. It's recognizing that those challenges and adversity is going to exist, and what are you going to do with that challenge and adversity? It's never going to be perfect, and the world is changing at a much more rapid pace. There's a terminology that's often used, it's coined by the U.S. military called VUCA. I don't know if you know that term. It's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That used to be something that was applied to acute situations. It's widely started to be communicated. We're just living in a VUCA world right now. So you have to be able to just deal with that type of change constantly. Teach your organizations to deal with that change. That's probably one of the best things that we had already started to do in retail. A lot of volatility from the retail apocalypse to recession to whatever. We had already learned how to be agile. And all of us, though, had to go through a master class of agility during COVID. So the recognition of the need to be agile is absolutely critical right now. The jobs that kids might be training for, the SMITE Vice piece, might not exist in 3 years, 5 years, might not even exist by the time you get out of college. When you decide what you're going to major in, it might be gone in 5, 6 years. So learn the basics of thinking outside the box, of connecting people, recognizing opportunity, realizing that yes, chaos can exist, but inside of chaos is where opportunity lies if you look at it the right way. And then please, when you're going through some of these challenges, also have the recognition, the self-analyzation to glance back at that moment in respect to Mr. Chopra and say, okay, what happened isn't anything until I define it. Redefine your narrative in a way that is empowering to you and empowering to the people around you so that you can continue to move forward based on that values-based leadership.
I think that the best piece of advice, and I know I've said this a couple times in different venues, show up. For those who are looking to take the next step, show up. I think that's just super critical. And as I've looked, reflecting on my own personal leadership journey, a lot of it was just showing up. A lot of it was accepting or taking on the problems other people didn't want to touch or weren't interested in, or it wasn't the most glamorous of problems to solve, and by accepting those and just showing up and saying, I'm going to take a try, that's how you are going to end up driving your resilience, your creativity. It's going to expand your perspective, and it's going to touch on a level of awareness through those experiences that you might not otherwise get. So, you might not know what the outcome is, but I think by showing up, you can at least give yourself the chance and the opportunity to being able to drive what that outcome could look like.
Early in my career, happy accident happened along the way, which is one of my mentors helped me develop my own personal board. Over the years, it's grown to 5 or 6 folks. I'm not going to tell you their names because they have all the dirt on me that I don't want to share publicly. But that really embodies the best version of myself, and they aspire and inspire me to become that. So this is not a group that just gives you the platitudes or pat you on the back. This is the group that I've gone to multiple times when it's time for a big decision, a career change in your life, a big decision as relates to something going on inside the company. These are folks that I don't have to talk to them every day. I don't talk to them every month, as a matter of fact, but I can call them at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday and get a call back that night about something that is important to me, because they're all higher net worth individuals that I am or will ever be, but also can give you critical and candid feedback in a world that, as you get to a certain level, less folks are going to tell you the truth about yourself. So that balance for me has worked extraordinarily well. I don't take myself seriously, but I take the job that we do on behalf of Amazon and AWS very seriously. And my board members are above reproach, and I appreciate their time and their energy with little old me.
I think that's spectacular advice for anybody to try to do. The message to the youth today, to me, is please do not be discouraged or overwhelmed with our world today. I sincerely believe that we're entering a new era, the orbital age, and the work that is going ahead is going to be impactful and incredible. Even today, we have the technology to 3D print organs in space that cannot be done in the gravity of Earth. So think about, too, from a healthcare perspective, if you have the opportunity to have tissue taken from someone who needs to have their own transplant, you can generate these cells in a microgravity or zero gravity effort. I'm going to flip a little bit of what Sharon said in that, when you are contemplating what you want to be when you grow up, and it may not be there, your current course. From my experience, what I do didn't exist when I was going through school at this time. So I think to have the agility, the flexibility, the open-mindedness, the intellectual curiosity, to have the self-awareness, to be able to really stop once in a while, if you have a great board, that would be helpful, to reassess where you are and where the world is and take a look around to see if there's other technologies or passions that you're developing as you're maturing and having an opportunity of seeing the world in a different way?
Maybe there's been so many brilliant lessons told. Maybe I'll take 30 seconds and tell a very quick anecdote, maybe to illustrate something instead. When I was about 24 years old, I joined a tech startup out of the MIT Media Lab called ATG. It grew to a $7.4 billion IPO. I was employee number 32 or so. I was not the founder or the CEO, but it was an incredible rocket ship to be part of. And sometime around, month 2 or so, the CTO, Joe, came in and said, "Hey guys, we're going to be big. I swear we will. But we need every single Java engineer that exists that possibly can work for us because we're desperate for that talent." In that era, it was new. Now it's a commodity that one can outsource. But we basically started looking around, and he told us he met this guy named Yasha. He'd interviewed him. Yasha knew every answer to every question he asked. In fact, in between interview 1 and 2, Yasha, on his own, had decided to volunteer to reprogram the entire Boston Computer Museum exhibit in Java just to show off. At that point, Joe said, "Listen, Yasha, I don't even know what your salary requirements are. Just tell me we are hiring you. You're not working anywhere else." So Yasha said the intuitive thing, which was, "Hang on a second. I'm 15 years old. I go to Brookline High School. Let me put my mother on the phone." Which I thought was really interesting on a couple levels. One is, so we started that Monday, by the way, for Massachusetts state law said you can't work more than 15 or 20 hours per week. We got him for like 17 and a early decision letter to MIT from Joe, and off and running he went. And he was an incredibly productive guy. We didn't think about, how can we discriminate against this person or that person based on their identity, their age, their race, their anything. We wanted someone who could do something. So I think one interesting lesson was people pay for scarcity. Another interesting lesson is I'm very interested, and always have been, and would encourage others to be interested in, entering industries and markets on the very early innings. It's when things are most volatile, according to the U.S. military. And so I think those are two areas. And then thirdly, I would just say different people speak different dialects, and whether I was a product person, so I loved the notion of connecting the dots and gluing together a lot of different interdisciplinary people, and I had to learn how to speak those different languages. So when Yasha and I worked together, I kind of had to learn how to speak engineering with whiteboards, but when I was talking to the sales staff, I used like kind of a football coach voice. And so I think stretching oneself in your communication abilities and being very aware of what inning you're competing in, it gives you a little more room to run, particularly early in your career.
I want to thank this panel for providing a masterclass in leadership like no other.